Imagination. Whether yours is still vivid or has faded, a space for the Unbound will remind you of how powerful a tool it can be, either for creativity or escapism. Often as we age and gain more agency in our lives, our ability to imagine withers. Some look back on it fondly as a reminder of their youth, while others view it more jaded, as a disillusionment that has no place in the so-called real world. Regardless of your disposition, this game uses imagination as a meaningful point of leverage to tell its story. The heart and soul of this game comes from exploring the relationship between Atma and Raya, two wanderers whose lives have crossed paths, changing them both forever. But the relationship and its history is one the player has to uncover, peeling back the layers of storytelling and piecing things together for themselves. That's because this title is heavily inspired from the movie Inception. The development team isn't even shy about this point of comparison, as it's listed directly in the title's description on PlayStation 5. While Atma and Raya both might appear to be ordinary high school students, they are very much not, as each has their own key magical ability. Raya can bend reality to her will, creating and destroying things as she sees fit, but it comes at a cost. Using too much of her power will cripple her for some time, forcing her to rest. Therefore, for much of the game, you'll experience the story through Atma's eyes, as his power is a bit more tamed. He's a young man who's been given a magical red book that allows him to explore the inner psyche of people. This practice is called space diving, and it allows him to see past people's hardened exteriors to instead focus on what really ails them, whether it be childhood trauma, difficult relationships, or a loss of purpose in life. And by helping those people and setting things right in their mind, they often are able to reestablish a will to carry on. And this is the crux of the gameplay. It's mostly what you'll be doing. As a result of constantly jumping between reality, psyches, and also different timelines in the later chapters of the game, you the player will find yourself asking, what is real about this game world? What is actually tangible about this video game world, if anything at all? And that feeling of not knowing is one factor that will keep you playing, as you're constantly trying to decipher what the overall meaning of the story is. We have an example of a game being vague with its storytelling to lure you in, but it also provides satisfying explanations and answers as the story wraps up, allowing you to see if your mid-game predictions were true or not. And to be clear, those predictions will be constantly changing as major events change the tone and feel of the story, with your perception of each character constantly being in a state of flux. And for that reason, the Inception comparison is quite apt and appropriate. I can see what they were going for, and I think they nailed it. Of course, besides the mystery, the other reason the title's story works so well is because it's extremely life-affirming, reminding us that even in the darkest times, there's ways to find happiness. Perhaps my favorite line in the game comes when one character tells another something akin to feel something deeply is okay. It means you're alive, and as long as you're alive, you have a chance to find happiness. It's a wholesome message to deliver, and deliver it does. You see this throughout the game as you help the citizens of this quiet Indonesian town rediscover their passions in life. Whether it's through helping a father give up on chasing money to instead reunite with his son, or helping a young boy find the courage to stand up against bullies. It's a story about giving people hope, providing them the nudge they need to move forward in life and leaving the past behind. It's always a beautiful sentiment that we could all use a little bit more reminding of. This theme is reinforced through these one-off encounters, but it's done primarily through Atma's ever-changing understanding of Raya's struggles. Despite her powers, Raya deals with traumatic parenting and bullying at school. She uses her power to manipulate reality as a means of escapism, to forgo the problems of her everyday life. Without spoiling anything major, your journey will be about convincing this struggling young woman to come back to reality and embrace it, while not losing touch with her inner child, her creativity, and her sense of imagination. Finding that point of balance where her creativity can be a fun outlet instead of a necessity is the key, and building to that point is something the game does very well. Now, there will be small portions where the pacing can feel quite slow, particularly in the final chapter, but as a whole, I think they did it wonderfully. So how exactly do you go about accomplishing these lofty goals of helping others? In other words, what the heck do you do in this game? Well, what you'll mostly be doing is working through point-and-click item management as well as simple puzzles. There's 5 chapters throughout the game, and while the setting rarely alters, the people and the events comprising the world will constantly be changing from mission to mission. It helps this place feel grounded, while also feeling alive, as characters who are in one place one day may be located somewhere else the next. Regardless of where you are, you'll often help them by finding items in the world and delivering them to people, either physically or within the inner machinations of their mind. Shout out to Patrick Starr. This means exploring the town, looking for context clues by talking to citizens, or noticing objects in the world to be picked up. Oftentimes, finding a single item won't be enough. You'll have to alter it somehow by bringing it to someone else, or using another item in conjunction with it. Or you might even have to get another item for an NPC so that they will give you the item that you need. Luckily, the game is often quite logical with what it expects from the player's thought process when it comes to puzzle solving or what to do with items. It very rarely asks you to make any drastic leaps in logic, save for maybe 1 or 2 instances. And that's huge for a game that has as much dialogue as A Space for the Unbound does. The story is the driving force. It's what compels you to keep playing. And this more rudimentary gameplay allows you to keep progressing that story consistently without letting you shut off your brain completely. The game also keeps things fresh by introducing new gameplay ideas in each chapter, whether it be fighting hostile NPCs in simple quick-time event combat, or conducting full-length investigations where you use evidence to cross-examine people, or simply by moving through different timelines of a single area to find all the items you need. And these new ideas allow the gameplay to feel fresh across the roughly 8 to 10 hours the player will spend in this world. That 2-hour variation mostly relates to how much the player chooses to engage with the side content. Really, there isn't a whole lot of it, but what is here comes in the form of a bucket list made by Raya and Atma. At the game's outset, you'll create a list of everyday simple tasks to experience. All of these items can be completed as you play through the game, but finding out exactly how to accomplish each will take a bit more thorough investigation of the world, leaving no stone unturned and no NPC left untalked to. By finding all the secrets, you'll probably earn the Platinum Trophy on a first playthrough. A little bit about the presentation, and there isn't much to say, as it's pretty much a what you see is what you get situation. The pixel art is wonderfully handcrafted with a lot of work put in to make these characters come to life despite the archaic but beautiful art style. It allows for the developers to blend the subtle beauty of our everyday world with crazy magical sci-fi locations with ease. A mesmerizing piano melody highlights the soundtrack along with a few select vocal pieces to really drive home the emotion of certain scenes. The only real point of contention here comes in the English translation, as there are quite a few examples of grammatical and spelling errors, but it's very easy to overlook them. Hell, I'm not perfect when it comes to writing either, and I'm not gonna bash this title for it too harshly. So all in all, a really solid technical game with a simple but inspired visual design. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, inner imagination is something that many adults lose touch of. A few maintain that relationship with their creative inner child, but for many, it fades into apathy with aging. The strength of this title is that, at the very least, the player will be invited to feel the power of imagination once more and become reacquainted with old memories of how it enriched their childhood or even helped them to escape life's hardships. It can get you thinking about this because of how easy it is to slip into the world and its very real characters who deal with very real issues. Despite the cheeriness of this unassuming little town, there's a deep thematical dive into depression to be uncovered within the main story. It's a topic that's handled with nuance and grace, as it doesn't demonize, patronize, or ostracize those struggling with it, while also pushing them to become a better version of themselves by finding something to live for, by finding inner confidence and a quiet resolve. A Space for the Unbound walks this tightrope quite elegantly, leading to probably the best narrative I've experienced on this topic since playing Celeste in 2018. While it may have its occasional pacing issues and relatively simple gameplay, this title is still a fantastic experience and one I can't recommend enough for you to experience on your own. Whether it's a main character or one you'll simply help in passing, you'll find someone who you can relate to simply because we are all humans trying to find our way in a harsh world. A Space for the Unbound encourages us to press on, while helping others and learning to get back in touch with our sense of imagination, creativity, and wonder that fueled our childhood days. And to me, that's a beautiful sentiment that games can touch on so well. And we have another shining example of that right here. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this brief review of A Space for the Unbound. I challenged myself to be more concise in this video, and I'm pretty happy with the end result. I didn't want to dive too deep into the story because it really is the driving heartbeat of this experience, and I didn't want to spoil anything. I hope I've piqued your interest enough to give this game a shot though. It's funny because I just got done making my, top games of 2022 list, and then we start January, and it always feels like the games in January often get neglected at the end of the year, because by the time we get to December 2023, I'll have had 12 months of new games to experience, and so yeah, this one might have faded a little bit in my mind, but I hope it's one that sticks with me as the end of the year comes. Only time will tell. What I can say for now, before we have this amazing spring of a ton of huge new games, go ahead and check this one out. As always guys, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, join our Discord, the link is below, and as always, have a nice day, and take care.